Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of One More Thing, where Pastor Eric is going to dive in a little bit deeper to share some information maybe he didn't get to this past Sunday when we started talking about the series of wisdom. So
Yeah,
drop some more wisdom on us here.
it was funny because the first service, I was like, I looked at the clock on my iPad and I was like, wow, I'm way over. I mean, I wasn't way over at that moment, but I knew like if I went any further and I knew it was pretty much a good place to stop. So
Yeah.
before I went into a new section, but yeah. And what's funny is the whole idea of the message is the beginning of wisdom. So I didn't even really cover the main the thing in the message. I mean, it was a good message, but I wasn't able to really dive deep into the idea of the message was the beginning of wisdom,
Hmm.
which is the fear of the Lord, and that's really found in verse 7. So I kind of started the message with why the book was written, and not the main theme of how do you start with wisdom, where's the starting place, right? And so that's really what I want to talk about today. So I gave a lot of context of why wisdom was bestowed or why Solomon wanted to share that wisdom. But now I wanted to make sure that we kind of talked about the beginning of wisdom. What's the starting place? How do you start? And so the start is to know and fear God, and that's what the verse Proverbs chapter 1 verse 7 says. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. So basically, that's the starting point. If you really want to have wisdom in your life, you start from ground zero. The first step is to recognize there is a God and to have that respect, to have that awe. And I'm going to highlight some of those things more in depth this Sunday, but I wanted to kind of share some of the verses and talk about some of these thoughts because, again, and it was kind of interesting because I did recently a podcast with a creation scientist, Dr. Ramertry, and I love this thing he said. There's one thing to pursue knowledge, and that's okay, but be more inclined to seek truth. Knowledge is not always truth.
Mm.
And I think that comes into play with this fear of God and respect and awe of God and just the value of God in your life is you're seeking truth instead of just knowledge. You can be full of knowledge, and it goes back to the idea too that there's a difference between wisdom and knowledge.
Hmm.
You know, knowledge is just in influx of just knowing things. Where wisdom is the application of that knowledge, putting the knowledge to use. That's wisdom, because you can be full of a lot of details, but unless you're really putting that knowledge to use, that's where wisdom comes into play. So it goes on. And it says, "But fools despise wisdom and instruction." And I'm gonna dive deeper in a message here in a couple weeks, talking about the different aspects of people. Basically, there's four types of people. There's the simple, and then there's the fool, then there's the mocker, and then there's the wise. And so, in a separate message series, not in series, separate message here in a few weeks, I'll dive into those four distinctions. So, but it's saying, you're silly if you're going to despise wisdom and instruction, and that's what we talked about too. This past message was having those be key things that we look for. Is that we want to desire wisdom, and the path to get wisdom is through instruction. It's being rebuked at times. It's being taught something. And if we are resistant, and that's why I don't want to pick on teenagers, but it's kind of an easy thing to kind of look at teenagers because they start getting all this knowledge in their head and they think they know everything. And it's easy to. You're young, you want to prove yourself, you want to show people hey, I know some things. But wisdom is saying, I need instruction. I need to be taught. And if you want to pursue wisdom, it's a lifelong journey. You can't take shortcuts. You've got to go and seek out details and really seek out answers. And like we talked about this past message too, just to highlight again, you've got to have a desire to learn yourself, to learn, and then you got to look for guidance outside of you.
I think that's so true because it's like it's a wise thing to do to seek and be open to seeking the truth and the more options. I mean, if you think you know it all, or you think you have the information without having any inkling to want to dive in and look and approach it from a different way, to me, it's not why. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so it's funny how to gain that, you got to use the very same thing. Like, be smart about this, be wise, and I like that. I liked how you worded that, to be able to continue to seek that truth and not just stick with what you think or you think you know.
Yeah, we should be in a pursuit of truth. So I like that distinction. And again, going back to always being, and I don't want anybody to miss this. Learning is very important, but you can learn a lot of stuff, but then you have to be guided, and you have to have people around you to kind of set the.
And a wise person in pursuit of that is going to be okay with that guidance. It's going to be okay, like you said, with that rebuke or whatever, and
we could even dive. This would be an interesting conversation. It might be worth having down the road. But even thinking about the fact that when you're sometimes people that can be, I guess, narcissistic, or they're not taking everybody else's viewpoint of the real world. They come from an aspect. This is how I see it. So that's learning. They're all internalizing everything, and their worldview is just coming from here. Where a wise person, it's not just internal, it's outward. And so you're taking other people's perspective to help you define reality. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, you're using both. I'm learning, but I'm guiding.
You need parameters.
Yes.
You need, it's a fancy word, but you need boundaries. You need those different points to triangulate things to help better shape and mold and pinpoint something specifically. And that's where that falls into play.
Yeah.
If you all always come from the same area, the same thing, that's very minimal one thing, and it's hard to really nail down something. But if you can have those kind of parameters, man, you can really dial it in with your a decision or.
And again, that's
whatever.
where I use the illustration of a teenager, because the teenagers starting to become more reliant on learning, and as they break free from some of the parenting that they've received, don't get so focused on just the learning aspect. You got to keep that balance of learning and guidance to really define and help you understand reality versus what you just take internally. That it works both. Both are at play. But going back to this fear of the Lord. So here's some scriptures here. Ecclesiastes chapter 12 verse 13. And now, after this whole book is being read, and as you start in Ecclesiastes, it really talks about life is meaningless, right? Except, basically this relationship with God, and that's kind of how it closes with this. It says, now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. So I find this interesting because, one, Solomon understands that there is a responsibility that we have as mankind to God. It's not like that, and I think this is the reason why people don't believe in God, right? Because they don't want that responsibility. They don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to be, for some people, it's easier not to believe that God exists because then they don't have any responsibility. They don't have to answer to anybody. And so they don't have to answer for their sins or their past behaviors or their hardened heart. They don't have to have any accountability to that. So it's easier to believe that there is no God than accept a God that you have to be accountable to. And I think that's the real heart of the issue, right? Is why we become our own God. We are choosing not to understand or fully appreciate that God is the one that created us, made us, and called us to being. So after all the discussion in Ecclesiastes that happens, Solomon's saying, here's now the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commands. So there is an obligation on our part to respect God, and also that there's there's a duty for us to fulfill. There's a plan that God has for us, and he created for us for a purpose. And it goes on and it says in verse 14, it says, "For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil." And I just think one of the biggest things is no matter what you do in this life, you're never going to escape God's authority. You people think they've hid things. It's like the person that took some of the treasures from Egypt, or no, sorry, it was treasures from another city that they weren't supposed to keep, right? And they hid it, and then they were caught with it. God knows. God sees. So you can't hide anything from God, good or bad. God sees. He knows. And there is judgment for those type of things. And I think that's an important thing for us to know and understand, that nothing is, we think we got away with something, but did you? Did you really? I mean, even sometimes you like see these unsolved mysteries and you're like, are they ever going to catch the guy that did this crime? And is they going to get their, just desserts, I guess, for what they did or the crime they committed? But God knows, even if they got away from man, that's one thing, but you'll never get away from God. And, again, thankfully, for us that choose Christ, he wipes away that slate clean. But if you don't have Christ, who's going to stand in the gap for you? Who's going to be your defense attorney? Who's going to be your advocate? Anyhow, just something to think about. And then let's look at Job chapter 28, verse 28. And I'm going to break this down a little bit, each little statement. But it says this first. It says, "And he said to the human race, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. And to shun evil is understanding." So I think that's a very powerful verse here. But here's the kind of the breakdown of this. First of all, fear the Lord. Wisdom begins with a reverence for God. It's a respect for God. It's not like when we say fear, it's kind of like you ever notice a police officer, and what's your initial, like if you see a police officer on Route 50, what's your initial reaction?
You slow down.
Yeah.
You check your speed.
Yeah. You're making sure you're doing everything right. You look at that's my first reaction is look at my speedometer. And I might not be doing anything wrong, but it's like my first thing, right? So is that like it's not like I'm afraid of a police officer in the sense that I'm not afraid to go up to a police officer. But when I see a police automobile or a police officer in a certain situation, I have respect for that. Because one, I don't want to get pulled over, right? And that's the kind of fear we're talking about. We're not talking about being afraid, like, I'm terrified. That's not the fear we're talking about. We're talking about a fear that's respectful, and that you have respect for God. Just like in that scenario. Like if the President of the United States would come and visit our church at some point, and I'm not saying which political party president, I'm just saying a president, any president.
Yeah.
It would be special, right? We would treat it differently because we'd have respect for that office, even a governor. So that is the kind of respect and fear that we're talking about. And then, the phrase here, it says, that is wisdom. And here's the idea behind it. Wisdom is not merely knowledge, but a posture of worship and trust towards God. Now think about that for a second. It's a posture of worship and trust towards God. Wisdom is knowing that I don't have all the answers. I don't have everything figured out. I think that's probably the biggest thing for all of us to understand. I don't have all the answers. Sometimes we try to fake it till we make it type thing. Like, I don't want people to know I don't know this. And what I've really found out, the more inquisitive you are, the more you're asking questions and you want to learn, the more people kind of like are at ease because they feel more comfortable. Like, well, he doesn't have it all together. And it's like, well, maybe I don't have to either. And so many times we try to fake it. Like I know I did when I was younger, like trying to, I wanted to prove myself. And I think with wisdom, you start realizing well, wait a second. I want to learn. I want to know how things work. I want to understand more, you know.
Well, I found that to be exhausting, trying to fake it.
Yeah.
Like I think, because I'm same thing. There's times and moments in life where I've done it, and I'm like, I think I've learned. Maybe I've gained some wisdom in that or something. Like it's almost exhausting trying to play that card and play up to that, and then because you can talk all you want, but then sometimes you have to come back and you have to figure it out somehow. You actually have to get the information. So then I don't know. To me, I just think it's almost exhausting trying to fake it. And then, to your point of being inquisitive and asking, I think sometimes what not only does it show to other people that, okay, well, they don't have it all together, maybe it's okay, but it's also showing that, oh, well, there's effort there. It's not like, that person's okay with just getting by and faking it and not knowing this or not. They're asking questions. So it looks like they're trying to gain things or trying to, and I don't know. I think that plays into, some people might think, oh, well, look at him ask all these questions. He doesn't know what he's doing. Some people can still have that mindset, but I like to believe that if I'm asking questions, if I'm intrigued, I'm pursuing more knowledge in then it speaks volume to that person as a positive thing.
Yeah. Well, and going back to your point too, a lot of times we worry about, if you're in the pursuit of truth, if you're in pursuit of wisdom, then you can't worry about other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like as far as their perception of you.
Mm-hmm.
You're just seeking truth, and you're looking for opportunities to learn, and you're looking for opportunities to grow.
So I'll share an example, kind of a personal one, I guess, but just like here, where I kind of stepped into this role of kind of overseeing production in AVL. I know a lot about that stuff. I've been around it. I have a lot of knowledge of it, but here I am walking in, and there's already kind of a team established, and one aspect, I'm trying to kind of prove myself, trying to show that I can be trustworthy. I do know these things, but I can't come in just with that dominating, oh, I know what I'm doing. There's a lot of times I was still asking questions, even though I may kind of know some of that. I want to hear from this person because they've been a part of that before I came along here, and so it was a way, I felt like that was another way to kind of gain some of that trust because I'm asking some questions that maybe they're like, oh, a normal person wouldn't ask that kind of question. Well, because I do have a little bit of knowledge, I can ask a certain question, which then gain that kind of what I'm shooting for, is a little bit of confidence and trustworthy, and at the same time, I'm learning. I'm gaining more insight. And then here we are starting a conversation of how we can make it better from here, you know. So I kind of relate to that kind of scenario.
No, that's great. That's wisdom, right? You used the knowledge you had, and you may have not known the answers to some things, but you used that as a way to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And you were seeking truth. You were not trying to find out things to use it to your advantage. You were looking for ways to help the team.
And I wanted us to learn together.
Yes.
I think that's a great way because they have insight, I have insight. If I didn't just ask, I just came in and did, they're not going to know why this might be better or that doing it that way works, But as we converse and ask these questions, maybe we can make it as a whole better,
Yeah, and that's maybe a thing I needed to make sure I drove home more too, is that with guidance, it reduces blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
So when you,
I don't like blind spots.
Yeah, because if I don't get, and that's why, for me, I like to bounce ideas off to the rest of the staff, to people here that are at the church. I like to bounce ideas off to, whatever committee that I'm talking to for whatever pertains, because maybe I don't see the blind spot. Maybe I don't see that area that I need to see so that somebody can give me the information, because, a lot of times I can be very easily very decisive, but I don't want to make a rushed decision on something without having the context. And the only way to get the context is for me to reach out and say what everybody else thinks.
Absolutely.
And then listen to that. listen to that guidance. It doesn't mean I have to take everything that comes my way, but I have to be open to listen and then evaluate it. Listen and evaluate what guidance I'm getting.
Yeah, and I have just found that to be so true because to me, I look at it as, you're trying to start something or do something, right? Wouldn't I want to start something or go do that with my best foot forward?
Yeah.
And to me, it's having this it's looking in every aspect of something because sure, I can just dive right into it, but I don't think, I feel like it can all easily fail or falter a lot more when, hey, what if I just get all this kind of done beforehand and I can go do it to 100%. And then if something doesn't work out the way you think it should or it doesn't work out, then to me I can look back and say, wait, I did everything I know I could have. I talked to so many people, I got so much, maybe there's some more tweaks that need to be done, that's fine, but it's better than, I think maybe a 90% success rate is better than a 50 if I didn't. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
I just want to do everything I possibly can to get insight, to gain knowledge, to whatever before I do something or make that decision. Because then I can say at the end, well, I felt like I went into it with everything I could.
Yeah.
And if the end is something, I can say, well, no, I probably could have done more or something else could have, then okay, well, then there you go. I just don't like leaving it up to, did I really pursue every avenue?
Well,
you know what I mean?
That's wisdom in pursuing other avenues and making sure that before you make the decision, like I'm saying about maybe I tend to make too quick of decisions. I need to pause more. So each of us are a little different in how we handle things. But I just think about the fact that the more, like you're saying too, the more I involve other people in the process, the better decisions I can make. And then also you're working as a team rather than an individual. I think so many times we think to show value or for us to be valuable, right, that we have to be always a leader or have to have the title or have to, what I've found is no, you be a team builder, a team worker, care for those around you, serve those around you. That opens the door for greater things.
If you're the kind of person that is seeking, look at my value, look what I can do. How can you do that if you go at it alone? No one's there to see.
You're
You know
just
what I mean?
taking a walk.
I mean, what they're going to see.
You're not leading anybody.
They might see the result or the outcome, good or bad, but like they're not seeing what it took. So bring the team with you. Then they're going to see what value you know what I mean? Hopefully you're not so selfish and you're seeking that all the time. But
my prayer for Porterfield is this for the future. And we're I've been talking some about it recently about, I'd like for the staff to each have a mentor or a mentoree to mentor somebody. So what I'd love to see is that what we do here, there's multiple people to know how to do what we do. Like we can interchange parts. We can adapt quickly. Like if somebody needs time off, then we've got people to move in places where they, that no one feels like, no area of the church should feel like if that person can no longer do that job, that we're gonna fall apart. I hope that we can get to a place where in the church that we are so ingrained with everybody having knowledge, but also wisdom, so they know how to do things, and they don't feel like they need, to rush in and correct things, but that we can just continue to move in a positive way. So, moving into this next thing, it says turn away from evil. True understanding produces a moral response. I thought that was interesting. And again, it goes back to the atheist that doesn't want to know God because that means that they have to do something. True understanding. If you really understand something, then you're held accountable to it, right? It's like once people started realizing cigarette smoke was so dangerous, and they started putting the warnings on the labels, and they started keeping people from smoking certain places, then it started, or like seatbelts. You think about how that's changed with
No
before
more riding in the back glass of your mom's car.
Yeah, or sitting on the arm seat as a booster seat, the armrest. But a lot of things, once you make people aware, then there's a moral response to that, and that's key. That we have that. And then the last thing here is understanding. It's insight leads to obedience and holiness. It's having that understanding in your mind that leads to that insight that, no, this is really what's best for me. It leads to that, okay, I'm going to obey that now. I'm gonna wear my seatbelt because I don't want to be in danger. I don't want to smoke because I understand the dangers of smoking. All those things. In the same way with God, I know these temptations are bad for me, so I want to stay away from these areas where I might be tempted. I want to, reduce the amount of things I'm doing wrong against God. I want to change my heart, and I want to grow in my faith, and I want to read Scripture. It's as you get closer to Christ and you start getting more understanding and more insight, you start being obedient to those things. Just like with you, with some of the things you've done with the men, it's kind of conditioning yourself to, not only know it, but then be obedient to those things. Mm-hmm. So that's really all I have. Well, let me share this one last statement about fear of the Lord. To fear the Lord means to live with a deep reverence, awe, and respect for who God is. I love that. A deep reverence, awe, and respect of who God is. His holiness, His power, His authority, justice, and love. It's not about being scared of God, but about recognizing His greatness and responding with humble obedience, trust, and worship of Him. So I just want to kind of leave that as kind of think about fear of the Lord. And that's the beginning of the wisdom, and that's how I should have concluded my message this past Sunday. So.
Well, it was good. Everything that you were able to cover was really good, and so it's just exciting to kind of see what the next few weeks as you continue to dive into wisdom. And so if you missed it, go back on YouTube, Facebook, watch this past sermon.
Yeah, if I could add too, like don't feel like today is even, or when you watch this video, start now reading the book of Proverbs. Mm-hmm. That's our book that we're reading this month, and just dive into it. Just start reading. It's fascinating. And just because you don't understand everything, don't feel bad. It's okay. If there's one that sticks out to you, dive deeper. Mm-hmm. Research, study, look for other people's viewpoints on that scripture. Discuss it in a life group. Discuss it with a friend. Allow God to reveal things to you as you study His Word.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you once again, and thank you for tuning in to this, and look forward to next Sunday's sermon. So take care.